Roll call.
Michael O'Brien.
John Hutzko.
Lori G.
John Cutler.
Bob Wilbark.
Jason Pereski.
And if everyone would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have two upcoming meeting dates, one on April 16th and one on May 7th. And the first item on our agenda tonight is Taconic Innovation Site Plan Route 376 decision. We don't have to do a decision tonight, it's not a public hearing. Thank you though, Mark. All right, any questions or comments before we offer the neg deck? Anything new or?
It looks better already. Yeah, it does.
Okay. Then for this, I have a negative declaration with tonight's date for Taconic Innovations amended site plan. This was an unlisted action in the town of East Fishkill at 877 and 879 Route 376. We reviewed a full EAF, parts 1 and 2, a pre versus post drainage report, and a full SWIP in making our determination, and we identified several issues as relevant, and they included stormwater quantity and pollution prevention, potential traffic impacts, site lighting, cultural resources. The first one, stormwater quantity and pollution prevention. Detailed engineering analysis and stormwater pollution prevention plan was submitted and reviewed, which includes a hydrodynamic separator accompanied by a series of underground chambers. And Joe, is there anything else we should call out with this that was unusual with regard to the site?
No, I think we went into a fair amount of detail for the stormwater in this
Okay.
section.
All right. The second item was a potential traffic impact. The applicant's engineer submitted data relevant to the number of employees, shift times, number of patients or students, and that was reviewed by the town traffic consultant. After that review and taking into consideration the current site across the street and these sites and how those will shift around, we determined a couple of things with regard to traffic. The first was within the site itself, we had a requirement for 87 parking spaces that would be required. And based on our analysis and on the site capacity and current proposed use, we're recommending 53 parking spots be built now with this plan, land banking 26 spaces for future use for a total of 79 spaces, and 8 parking spaces would be waived by the board, again, just because of the use. And at the same time, we're recommending within the resolution that any change of use or change in tenancy, that sort of thing, would come back to us for review to determine whether the parking remains sufficient or we want to build some of those land bank sites out. We also looked at site lighting. The proposed lighting plan is consistent with the Dutchess County Greenway Compact, and the proposed illumination levels would not exceed 2-foot candles. And cultural resources, the proposed project would have no impact on cultural resources in or eligible for inclusion in in the state and national register of historic places.
February 22nd.
We had no other issues identified as relevant. So do I have a motion to approve the negative declaration?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And do I have someone who will offer the resolution?
Sure.
Thanks, Mike.
Resolution of final site plan approval. Name of the site plan is Taconic Innovations Incorporated. The name of the applicant, Taconic Innovations Incorporated. Location is 877 and 879 Route 376. Resolution offered by Planning Board member Michael O'Brien. Whereas the applicant has previously applied for and received site plan approval for a 5,000 square foot building known as 87 Route 376 on February 7th, 2012. And whereas prior to completion of the work on the above site of the applicant, acquired title to the adjoining parcel known as 879 Route 376 and sought to merge the parcels and develop the sites, both 877 and 879 jointly. And whereas the applicant applied for approval of the 879 site and sought modifications to the previously approved site so as to enable both sites to be one parcel, and whereas the planning board has elected to merge the sites and treat them as one, and whereas the applicant has applied for a site plan approval to include two buildings, one of 5,000 square feet and one of
20,000.
20,000 square feet. And whereas the action is considered to be an unlisted action under seeker for which a coordinated review was not undertaken, and whereas a public hearing on the joint site application was held on March 5th, 2013, and continued through March 19th, 2013, and whereas the negative declaration previously issued was reaffirmed and supplemented in the conditional negative declaration adopted on April 2nd, 2013,
If we may just strike the word conditional.
I was just going to say it wasn't, okay. Thanks, Tom.
the conditional negative declaration adopted on April 2nd, 2013. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board hereby issues final site plan approval for the above project as represented on a map entitled Taconic Innovation, prepared by MA Day Engineering dated December 14th, 2012, and revised to March 21st, 2013. And be it further resolved that this approval is subject to the following conditions, which must be completed before the plan is signed by the planning board chair. One, modifications set forth in the town engineer's letter of
February 22nd.
February 22nd. Two, a recording of the deed merging the two parcels into one is approved by the town attorney. Three, the granting of a utility sidewalk easement of 20 feet from the edge of New York's right-of-way and Route 376 into the parcel. Four, the plan will contain the written approval of the Dutchess County Health Department before it's signed by the chairperson. Five, demarcation of wetlands buffer. Is that applicable here?
No.
There's no wetlands
No.
on the side.
No, okay.
So scratch five. Landscape plan to be approved by,
Do we have a designee? Michelle, will you do that for us? Is that? Okay. By
AKRF.
Michelle.
by Michelle Robbins,
In
AKRF.
AKRF. Six, the planning board hereby exercises its authority under the zoning ordinance to allow land banking, it's right,
Banking, not breaking.
I was gonna say.
Let's make it
Of
banking.
26 parking spaces. The applicant and successors and assigns agree to construct said spaces upon 90 days' notice from this board after giving the applicant the opportunity to be heard. And seven, the terms and conditions of the negative declaration are incorporated herein. Anything else?
Yes.
Yeah, just, Tom, I know for under number 6, we're talking about the land banking. Do we also need to mention that the planning board is agreeing to waive 9 of the required spaces
8.
altogether?
Well, that's by incorporating the neg deck in there. No,
Gotcha, okay, all right.
And I had just one, the building is actually 22,300 square feet, not 20,000. There was a typo. in the-
Okay.
22.
That's correct, right?
22,300?
Correct.
Okay.
300.
22,300.
Okay, any other changes?
That's right. Okay.
Any other changes? Okay. Do I have a second? Oh, I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead and finish. Be helpful if you read the rest
There
of
we
it,
go.
sorry.
Be it further resolved that within 5 business days of the adoption of this resolution, the chair or other duly authorized member of the planning board shall cause a copy of this resolution to be filed with the town clerk and a copy sent to the applicant.
Great, do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Bob. And I'm sorry, bear with me 1 second. Okay, votes as follows. John Hutzko?
Aye.
Jason? Russ? Oh, sorry, Russ isn't
Absent.
here tonight. Michael?
Aye.
John Cutler?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
And myself, aye. The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
On this project.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is an adjourned public hearing for the John Jay Gas Station on Route 52. Do I have a motion to reopen the public hearing?
So moved.
And second?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
I was just saying, I thought somebody said second. Okay.
You agree?
Yes. Jason does too.
Good evening. Brian Stacosa, Gillespie and Associates. We're here tonight for the adjourned public hearing of the John Jay gas station. For members of the audience who may not be familiar, there's an existing gas station adjacent from John Jay High School that's been an eyesight for a while in the town. And we've had a new applicant that's come in and purchased the property. And as part of that purchase, there's been an agreement to do some remediation to the site.
They can't hear you, Brian.
There's a microphone there, just, we'll get it fixed. Go ahead and test it, Brian.
There is, as we mentioned at the last meeting, there is a remediation process that's ongoing by consent order by DEC. As members of the public may have seen, that's already started with the tank removal. It is ongoing on site currently. And as part of the local law that was passed, local law number 4, there is the ability for the applicant to come in on a parcel like this and redevelop the site. And before the board tonight is an application that details the removal of the car wash and the existing retail building and combining that area and expanding slightly and doing a new building toward the rear of the parcel, identified in blue on the plan. And in addition to that, we are proposing 4 filling stations for the pump and a new canopy directly in front of the building. Our initial concept was to close off the entrance along Route 52 and Lake Drive and modify the existing 2 entrances along Lake Drive to push them back slightly into Lake Drive. There is a drive-through that we're proposing in between the new building and the Archway Plaza with a drive-through lane, escape lane, and with an exit onto Lake Drive. We were here at the last public hearing. There was a lot of mention on traffic and what's going on with water. Those were the 2 big hits. And since the last meeting, I think we've had some constructive meetings with Mr. Tom Wood and Mr. Scott Bryant, specific to the water aspect of the project. We had the applicant's attorney, Dean Sommer, come down and really identify the extent of liability of which the applicant can take. And basically, I think Tom could probably expand further on that, is that we want to bring water across the street, across 52, and bring it to the back of our property. The process of doing that has been initiated. And speaking to Scott Bryant, the town engineer, they've actually gone out there and looked at locations and where we can tap into the line and come across 52. That's been initiated. The details of where that exact location is going to be are still undetermined. In addition to that, we are part of the Shenandoah Water District is along Route 52. And it's my understanding, and Tom maybe could explain this further, is that there's an agreement with the town to purchase up to, I think it's 80,000 gallons a day. And there has to be an agreement, I believe, with the town of Fishkill, since there are some concerns with chlorides and whatnot. It's an ongoing process. They have been in talks with the village and I believe the health department. And that has also been initiated. So that's more of a status update for the board when it concerns water. There has been talk of trying to form a district that would incorporate a section of the residents behind Lake Drive.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're waiting for is a meeting with the New York State DEC to see how we can facilitate this. We may have to phase it and maybe an overall district. Those are answers that we are seeking, and I think Tom and Scott are going to help facilitate that on the town's part, along with our applicant's willingness to bring the water across the street.
How much of this is part of the remediation of your site?
I think we had the consent to bring the water across the street.
You want me to?
Yeah, Tom, why don't you go ahead and,
Just,
if you don't mind.
obviously, nothing's as simple as we would like it to be. But basically, as we're all aware, DEC has a consent order against the prior owner, Botini Fuel, because of the contamination that was created. And they have some funds in escrow, and they also are willing to consider utilizing a state fund that's available for when there's pollution and contamination. So what happens in these, I've learned a lot in this process also, and hopefully I'll clarify some of the issues for the public. So what happens is a two-part thing, is that the applicant before the town apparently has experience with DEC in the past in other locations, where DEC enters into an agreement with him that allows him, based on his going into the site and cleaning the site, removing the tanks, cleaning the soil, doing some filtration work, etc., DEC grants the new applicant immunity from any liability, provided that he doesn't create a new contamination and provided he doesn't go off the site. And so based on that, this applicant came in, purchased the property. The proceeds for the purchase are being held in escrow. So that's phase one. Phase two is, in order for him to redevelop the site, he has made a commitment to bring the trunk line across Route 52 to the rear part of this property, which would be the connection. There is a trunk line now that runs right along Route 52 from Fishkill to Shenandoah, which feeds about 180 some odd homes with water. The town has a contract with the town of Fishkill to purchase 80,000 gallons a day of water. The Shenandoah system is only utilizing 35,000 gallons a day, so there is the availability of that water. The problem that's developed within the Fishkill system is they have some storage problems that they have to work out in order to be able to honor the contract with the town of East Fishkill for the 80,000. So that's the reference to the meetings with Fishkill to try to get Fishkill in a position to be able to fully fulfill the 80,000 gallons. So we did, between the last public hearing and tonight, have a meeting with the applicant's environmental attorney, who is from New Paltz or Albany. And he met with us to explain where they're at as far as the DEC, and he is going to facilitate a meeting for representatives of the town to meet with a representative of New York State DEC, as well as the New York State Controller's Office, since they administer the fund that is available to help remediate the issues off the site. So, however, before the town proceeds in that meeting, we want to make sure that the proper identification has been made in that community as to whether or not there are any other wells that are currently contaminated, etc., because we learned that the ones that have been identified only by self-reporting, that the property owner may have contacted DEC and said they were concerned and it was tested. To that event, the town board, at its last meeting, authorized the town engineer to have a independent engineering firm that specializes in water issues to take a look at it and to perhaps identify a few other areas for testing that we would test, so that when we go up to DEC and we're trying to arrange for the funding at no cost to the community to run public water in there, we would fully identify the sites that may be eligible for this special funding. So that's in the works now, as I understand it. LBG Engineering, which is a nationally recognized firm that does hydrological work, is reviewing it. And basically, they're going to identify a ring system that they'll do testing in a certain area and keep moving out from these sites that have already been identified. So there's a little bit of work that has to happen with that. And then at some point, we'd be in a position to meet with DEC, and then we'd be able to come back to the community and say, this is the funding that's available and what might be eligible for the quote-unquote public water supply in the back. So that's what's been going on that side of it.
Tom, do you have a sense, I know this is you probably don't, but do we have a sense of how long that's going to take to identify the homes? And then-
Well, I think that that's, trying to be expedited to get that information.
But then to go back and find the funding and,
Well, no, I mean, the
No.
town board's willing to advance the funds for the testing, because we don't want to go up to Albany and make a case based on 10 homes, if there are more, or if we can have a report from this engineering firm that says, you really better widen where you're correcting things.
right, no, I was getting at, after the testing, you're talking about going back to the government and saying, we want access to
Right.
these funds. What do you think the cycle time is for that? I mean, is that going to take years? Is that going to take months, or?
No, I
you don't
think we're
know?
on a shorter side of years, okay? But knowing government, it's not going to be months. So,
Okay.
some probably within a year.
Okay.
Because our understanding is that where this is with the state is at the point where they want to resolve it, and the way to resolve it would be to pay for public water supply.
Okay, so as it impacts this applicant has already been exempted from that as long as they meet whatever the terms of their contract is or
From
requirements are from
liability
the
for
DEC.
anything off-site.
Right, so are we able to proceed before we have these results from the state? and we
Well,
know
I'm
what
not,
might
I'm
be-
not proposing that he would be held up forever, but I think it'd be premature to say that tonight that issue is a non-issue for him, because I think until we actually have to sit down with DEC and the town officials confirm,
The extent
I'm
of the
assuming
contamination.
everything's going to be the way we were told, but until we see that commitment, I can't really recommend that you
Okay.
get too far.
So we
along.
need to at least determine the extent of the contamination with the testing that's being done now, and then determine what the next steps
Correct.
are with regard to the other government agencies and
Correct.
funding. Okay.
Mhm.
And you're comfortable with this?
And I think adding to that, the applicant has a very good rapport with the DEC, especially when it comes to remediation of these sites in particular. So I think his name behind the push does help, because he can get the job done, and he's got a proven track record in this respect. So
Okay.
I think it will help.
If I could, one of the, a lot of the public comment from the last time was circulating around costs to the homeowners for the water. And any feel for what the homeowners would be expected to bear.
Well, the purpose of going to the state controller's office is they administer, it's like a state Superfund site. Well, the Superfund is administered by the federal government, but the state has a similar one, which I learned that out of every gallon of gas we buy, a certain amount of that tax that we pay goes into this dedicated fund to be applied for cleanup. So the concept would be to get sufficient funds to do the infrastructure, and that's why we're trying to widen the area that would be eligible for this funding, because that infrastructure would be without cost to the homeowners. Okay. Now, even in the EPA Superfund site projects like Shenandoah, once the system is in and turned over to the town, there is the water cost of whatever it is for 1,000 gallons of water. So that's a cost that would be there.
Thank you, Tom. Want to go into traffic a little bit, and then
Let's
we'll
let's
open
go
up
into
for
traffic.
public comment?
The next big issue was traffic coming out of Lake Drive, specifically the left turn out of Lake. One of the biggest concerns was a left turn out of Lake Drive during the peak AM hour condition, and also perhaps in the afternoon, especially during the school year. The town engineer, traffic consultant, I think the public output that we had at the last meeting, we expanded our analysis to include some other intersections and some more observations during those peak periods. And I believe the course of action that we're gearing toward is he's completed the traffic analysis. We've acknowledged the fact that there's a conflict making a left turn out during the peak hour period. The thought was, and kind of riding on what happened with the Hopewell station, let's try to get this report to DOT, let's have them take a look at it, let's get their input on it, and then back into what types of feasible mitigation can be done with DOT being the ultimate approval agency on the intersection. And I think the applicant is agreeable to that. Brennan's actually tried to facilitate a meeting prior to tonight's meeting, but with vacation schedules and whatnot, I think they have DOT looking at the documents that have been prepared, both our site plan, both his traffic impact study. And I think we're just waiting to get all the powers that be in the room and just talk about concepts, maybe not specifically for maybe this site in specific, but also projects that are within the corridor, to get an overall master plan of the traffic that's in that area. And I'll let Brennan speak to that more.
Yeah, Brenda, do you want to update us? I know there was some additional information, so.
Yeah, I think it probably would be worthwhile for me to just sort of go through what we've done, what the data we've collected, and some of the analysis that we've done, so you can all put it in perspective. I'm probably going to throw a lot of information at you, but you know, you'll have your opportunity to come up and ask questions, and if there's something that I don't explain well or you don't understand, I'll be sure to clarify it to you. But since I mean, some of this was underway the last time we had the public hearing, but since then, just to let you know, we've collected a lot of data. We've taken manual turning counts at Lake Drive and at Rothel Drive. We've done that between the hours of 7 and 9 in the morning, 11:30 to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and 4 to 6 p.m. at both of those intersections. We've also collected automatic traffic recorders, basically traffic tubes on Route 52, on Lake Drive, and on Rothel Drive. After that data collection, we also collected accident data for the last 3 years, 2010, 2011, and up through the end of 2012. We have the number of accidents. We're still actually trying to chase down all of the MV-104s, which are the actual accident reports, because the summary of the data is sometimes ambiguous, and in order to be able to locate the accident correctly and find out the factors that were included, we actually need to read those accident reports. We have some of them, the ones that were available from the East Fishkill Police Department we have and have reviewed. The ones that they don't have, we are in the process of retrieving those from the state. After that process of data collection, then it's into the analysis of what this site, when it's developed, what kind of impact it's going to have on the traffic. The first step in that is that we estimate how much traffic is going to be generated by the project. In this case, it's a convenience store with gas pumps and a drive-through coffee shop. The guide for that is called the Institute for Transportation Engineers, the ITE Trip Generation Manual. Since this is a composite development, it doesn't fit neatly into you know, one of the textbook models. So we estimated the traffic using that manual, but in order to give it a reality check, we went out to look at some existing facilities. One thing we did do was take some traffic counts in the AM for the Dunkin' Donuts that exist in the Archway Plaza to get an understanding of how much use that's getting, since it's right there on the corridor and right at this location. And then we also went and looked at another similar facility in LaGrange on Knoxon Road, which is a gas station, convenience store, and a drive-through Dunkin' Donuts. It's a little bit more traffic there, and the facility's a little bit bigger, but when we looked at that and made adjustments for the size differences, we then felt comfortable with the estimates that we came up for the traffic generation. After we get that traffic, we look at how it's distributed amongst the roadway network, and then we look to analyze those critical movements. And as Brian said, the most critical movement is the left turn out of Lake Drive. The other critical movement that we always take a look at would be the left off the main highway. So this would be the left turn off of Route 52 onto Lake Drive. It's called the capacity analysis. What we determine is a level of service, and that level of service is rated from A to F, A being the best level of service, and F being, for lack of a better term, a failing level of service. Just to give you an understanding of the magnitude, a level of service A is a delay, and actually this level of service is based on delay. So when a car comes up to an intersection, even if it's in a queue, how long does it take that car to pass through that intersection? A level of service A is equal to or less than 10 seconds of delay, so not much delay. And a level of service F is something that's greater than 50 seconds of delay. And this is specific to an unsignalized intersection like Lake Drive. If it was a signalized intersection, there is another set of criteria and a different level of expectation. A signalized intersection, you actually have greater delay with a higher level of service. Like in the case of, you wouldn't get to a level of service F at a signalized intersection until you were past 80 seconds. Just to give you an understanding of that, it's the expectation of the driver too. An unsignalized intersection, there's no signal there, so you would anticipate to be able to get through the intersection quicker. We looked at the existing traffic that's out there today, and we did an analysis for that traffic. We did an analysis for what we're calling the no-build alternative, which is this gas station put back to use under its current configuration as a service gas station with car washes, and we added in an amount of background growth just for more traffic on in the area from other developments. And then we looked at the build condition of building the development in the way that that Brian has indicated. Just a quick summary of that. The existing condition for Lake Drive, for that critical movement coming out onto 52, it's a level of service C, which I'm just going to give you what that is, and which relates to a delay of between 15 and 25 seconds. And that C runs across the board for the AM, the midday, and the PM. The level of service for the left turn off of Route 52 onto Lake Drive is a level of service A, which, as I indicated, is less than 10 seconds. If we look at that no-build alternative, which is, establishing the gas station as it was out there in its previous life, adding in some traffic, that level of service then goes to an E in the AM, which is a delay of 35 to 50 seconds, and a D in the PM, which is 25 to 35 seconds. And as Brian indicated, when we go to fully developing that site in the AM and in the PM, it does fall to a level of service F with delays greater than 50 seconds. We did also look at...
Can I just, I'm going to
Sure.
ask a quick question while you're giving us a lot of seconds and things like that. I'm sure there's folks here that may have waited for longer than what you're saying when you say there's delays, there's delays at the intersection. So when you talk about a level of service, what's the likelihood that your delay is within that level of service versus longer than that level of service?
Yeah, it is an average delay, and so,
But I think you also ought to point out that 50 seconds is an F, so is 27 minutes.
yeah, right.
I mean, F is
Well,
anything
okay,
higher. That's just
I
important.
hear you, but can, just
Yeah.
let us understand, for a level of service, you're saying, 15 or 20 seconds, or
Right.
30 or 45 seconds. What's the likelihood, based on that level of service, that that's the delay that I have or less?
Yeah, well,
Is it like
when
80%? Is it-
when it's a passing level of service, yeah, that's the expectation. It's the average. There's going to be some that are higher, but there's going to be some that are less. And certainly when you're talking about, multiple movements out of one lane, when you're coming out of Lake Drive, some people are going to be taking a right and some people are going to be taking a left. Obviously, the right is a much more efficient movement. That's going to tend to skew things, to less delay and then more delay. There isn't a particular confidence interval. You can say 80% of the traffic.
Okay.
I mean, it's based on you develop a sort of a capacity for that entire movement, and then the delay is based on how much saturation you have of that traffic. So there are certainly, and then when I do say a level of service F, it's greater than 50 seconds. Certainly, it could be several minutes of delay, for some movements at particular points in time.
Right,
And undoubtedly, the delays were greater in the AM than any other time in the day, and really between that hour of really 7:45 to or 6:45 to 7:30 when school is coming in. That's that definitely was identified as being the worst period of time.
Okay.
Brendan, a couple questions. One.
Sure.
These things have normal distributions, so theoretically, you could sit there and say, within one standard deviation, either way, it's going to be 66% of the people will express, can we give them that kind of data that says 66% of the people will see between this and this?
It has to be a chop distribution, not a normal, because anything above is a D. So everything, all that's chopped off. So
Yeah,
it best be half normal.
It's you know, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't think, you know, it would really be more of a, you know, sort of an opinion than, you know, something that could be calculated out. The program, you know, doesn't function in that regard. You know, and again, it's average delay. I mean, obviously, you know, one thing to consider is, you know, certainly a busy state highway, it doesn't take a lot of traffic to, you know, to create poor levels of service.
Okay. And the other point, the no build, the no build in this case is a restore of the gas station in its previous form.
Well,
And the car wash.
Right. We thought that was a reasonable way to estimate what could happen if, you know, if this plan wasn't approved. So that we're comparing, you know, not just to the existing conditions out there right now, where the gas station is really not being utilized at all,
But
or underutilized.
theoretically, does the applicant have that course of action? If it doesn't get approved, they can just reopen the gas station as it was.
And the car wash.
And the
And the
car wash.
So that is.
Right.
They have to meet
Okay.
the criteria.
So then, the next question is, and I'm sorry, just,
That's right.
this was a study done, you weren't using previously gathered data, you went out recently and
Yes.
collected additional data,
Yes.
specifically for this study. So, and by the way, I assume there was no assumption of a link between Archway Plaza and, you know, that easement that was
Correct.
discussed early on. That's not there. So all the numbers, and then, the last thing is, from a trip generation standpoint, the assumption is how many people are drawn to that section of Route 52 by this store in your estimation versus are just stops of people passing by
Right.
anyway?
Just to give you an understanding of even the magnitude of the traffic that's generated, under its proposed scenario, what we're looking at is the site itself to have a trip generation of, in the AM, 108 cars entering, 110 cars exiting. In the PM, 95 cars entering, 94 cars exiting. Now, that's the cars that are entering and exiting the site. Now, because of the type of development being a gas station and a drive-through coffee shop, there are studies that can show the percentage of traffic which would be passerby traffic or traffic that comes from the existing traffic stream. The guidelines and the averages for that are for a gas station, convenience store, it's about anticipated that 65% of the traffic would come from the existing traffic stream, but it still has to get into and out of the site. So you have, you know, it's new to Lake Drive. It's not new to say, to 52. And just let me finish, for a coffee shop, a drive-through coffee shop, that percentage is closer to about 85% would be taken from the existing stream of traffic.
So is that to say up to 35% are people who would not come that way normally?
It's newly generated traffic, correct.
I mean, do we really think that's accurate? I mean,
Well, I mean, there's, you know, there's, I mean, again, that's based on, you know, the studies that have been done, that have been consolidated in that trip generation guide, and, you know, dozens and dozens of studies, you know, throughout the country.
okay. And so it's not like, I mean, I know a lot of people who would drive around just to avoid that place altogether in the mornings.
Right.
I mean, there's no self-limiting factor there.
Well, I think, I mean, we did use, you know, again, when you pick these, when you select a pass-by volume of traffic, you know, it's up to a certain amount. So it's usually up to 65%. And so we did, in this analysis, use those higher ends of the passerby traffic because of the corridor and the traffic that's there, and, you know, and the surrounding area. We do believe that, you know, those percentages are probably reasonably reflected, you know, what's in the manual.
So Brendan, with all of this study, and it's great information, but where do we end up here? I mean, it sounds like the proposed development is going to bring the level of service of the intersection down.
Correct.
So-
And just one other thing, just a couple other things that I wanted to bring up in Rothel Drive. When you look at all the houses that are back in the Lake Drive community, and you guys know better than us, just looking at the data, it looks like most people do enter and exit the development through Lake Drive more than they do Rothel. Rothel does, especially since the corporate park is not in operation. That's operating at a pretty high level of service, C with minimal delays. So when identifying that as as the level of service declining for Lake Drive, obviously the idea is to look at different mitigation things, and that's what Brian was alluding to. Right now, we have a lot of information in front of the DOT since it's a state highway, and we're trying to identify with them what could be feasible mitigation. And I'll just list some things that we're looking at. Signal, providing a signal is one potential option. When you look at the data that's out there, it doesn't meet the explicit warrants for a traffic signal, for a new traffic signal. And also, since there is an existing signal at John Jay High School, just the proximity of two signals in close proximity would be something the DOT would look at very closely. So another concept might be to actually relocate the school signal such that it could service both the school and Lake Drive. Another potential mitigation.
I'm sorry, folks, we just want to make sure we hear everything.
Can you expand on that before, and say where would it go? How
Okay,
would
well,
that look like?
again, it's a concept, and it's something that, we have identified to the DOT. Because right now, the signal at the high school basically services the high school. Doesn't service the corridor at all. Doesn't service Lake Drive, doesn't service any of the other commercial development, not even Archway Plaza, for that matter. Nothing connects to that signal other than the school. It would be somewhere in the vicinity of Lake Drive. It would probably require, some realignment of Lake Drive and realignment of the school driveway.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
that's the big piece.
Yes.
So basically, where that entrance only is in the morning, would suddenly become primary.
In that vicinity, correct.
Okay.
And other solutions or partial solutions would be to restrict left turn lanes, left turn movements out of Lake Drive and the development during certain peak hours. Expand the site plan to, currently right now, the entrance on 52 allows lefts in, rights in, and rights out. It doesn't allow lefts out. So we also having the DOT look at whether they would permit left turns out of there. If they were to allow left turns out of the entrance on 52, that left turning traffic then could be split up between Lake Drive and the entrance coming out of the proposed development. And then the last thing that we identified was there is a right turn lane that enters the school in the morning that actually overlaps with Lake Drive, and that entrance is only open in the morning, from our observation. It has a pretty large number of vehicles, about 130 vehicles in the AM peak hour are taking that right turn into the site. If there's some way to separate that traffic prior to Lake Drive, that's also something that would help ease the traffic at Lake Drive and make that movement of the left turn out a little bit easier. So where we are right now is sort of all the data and all the information is in front of the DOT. We're still working on getting some of that accident data. We have identified in 3 years 5 accidents right in the vicinity of Lake Drive and the service station. I think 1 related to the entrance to the station, and the other 4 in the vicinity of Lake Drive. There are a few more that we don't have located perfectly yet, and then a bunch more down by the John Jay signal and the entrance into Archway. So what we hope to gain with the meeting with the DOT is to understand what reality can and can't be, and then look at where we are.
I threw another one in there, and that is, it would just seem to me that Archway Plaza has to be factored into this somehow, right? You can't just sit there and have that driveway with all that traffic coming out of it. Because, I mean, that's part of what makes coming out of John Jay in the morning such an interesting event. Is there any way we can include them in terms of?
Well, the one alternative that I did mention of trying to relocate the existing signal, I mean, part of that would be, potentially shifting Lake Drive, and then there would be some potential that Archway Plaza could connect to Lake Drive, and be able to, have if the signal was really there, to have an out there. But, those are big changes, and, a lot of coordination would have to going into making that a reality. And I mean, in the previous meeting, I think it was brought up, or even in our discussions, the applicant did explore the possibility of trying to connect Archway to Lake Drive. But without some improvement to Lake Drive or signalization, that would just serve, at this point, to even make things more difficult at Lake Drive.
Right, my only point, and I agree, everything's been great analysis, thank you. My only point is, we can't fix this without including
Right.
all that other traffic sitting there.
No, and we have considered that. Even the other side, there's the medical office, and then there's also the potential out there of the corporate park being redeveloped or opened back up into some function that it was before, which again is going to add more traffic to the corridor.
Right.
So.
Brian, as Brandon's walking through these options, are there any of them that in the applicant's mind are impossible, or are there any that are more favorable? Give us a sense of which of these options
Right.
makes.
I think from the applicant's standpoint, and specifically going back to the Hopewell site, on how we thought we had a plan that made common sense, and then we put some time and effort into it. We went to DOT, and they kind of shot us down, was to, Brendan's done a very in-depth analysis. He's come up with some mitigation plans. They have been coordinated with the town engineer, and we just want to get the information to DOT and see what's reality. I think it's going to come down to a financial play to see which mitigation measure we back into, and mixes with the site from a financial standpoint too, because not only we're bringing water across the road as part of the remediation, but we're doing some site improvements to the station and the canopy and whatnot. And I think he would have to take a look at what's reality, and if he has to reduce a pump or two, or even consider reducing the building, I think that's where that comes into play. But we've really got to see where DOT's mind is and what their concerns are, and then we can readjust. This, again, this meeting here is basically a status update of where we are with analysis and
But it sounds like, from your
DEC.
opinion, nothing's off the table right now. You're just
Nothing's
waiting
off the
to see
table. I
what-
mean, we do have some major ideas on the table that are, I mean, realigning Lake Drive is a pretty heavy hit. So I think it's going to come into play on the financial aspect of it, to be honest with you.
Is there anything that you would propose as mitigation that Brandon hasn't mentioned? Anything you've thought of?
Mitch has looked at the traffic proposal and the mitigation proposed, and we've come up with some ideas in our mind, but the analysis that Brendan has provided, the mitigation that he does present to DOT I think is the best that we can do right now, without their
Okay.
input.
I
One
just
of the
want to make
things
sure if
they
there's
did-
other
yeah,
ideas,
yeah.
that we
One
have
of-
everything out in front of the DOT before we have that meeting, because,
One of the things that the applicant's the traffic consultant did bring up was right, currently as the proposal stands, the applicant is proposing a left turn lane off of 52 into the site, but they have also proposed potentially adding a left turn lane into Lake Drive and and potentially a left turn lane into Archway Plaza. Now,
Okay.
from a capacity standpoint, those
so
movements.
basically kind of just widening Route 52
Well,
at that point.
it's the width is already there. There's already a 11
restriping,
foot. Yeah, it's a
whatever.
restriping
Right.
thing, and some of it, and that's certainly going to be something that the DOT would have to approve and look at. They look at how many cars are making that movement. The fact that the traffic is separated with a flush median, there's some safety benefits to that. So unless you have a significant amount of traffic or you have some identified accident problems, they wouldn't necessarily look to install a left turn lane just for the sake of installing a left turn lane. So something would have to, would have to govern that. And usually it's, more than 50 cars making the movement in a particular hour, or like I said, an identified safety or operational issue. But that's certainly
Okay.
some mitigation that they've looked at and put on the table too.
Okay. And any other updates we want to give before we open up for public comment?
We have ARB approval, if it matters. The building is similar to Hopewell's structure, with the hardy plank siding, the stone around the windows.
Okay, and you have
Floor tables.
that's the picture on the bottom there is what the building's proposed to look like?
Yep, we have
Okay.
metal awnings and just an architectural shingle roof. But that's received ARB approval. Again, not much goes into updating the site plan, as we're just working out the details and getting input
Understood.
from public and DOT,
Okay.
DC.
And any other questions or comments from board members?
Yes. There's something that made the newspapers about 3 weeks ago, I believe, 4 weeks ago, about the water supply problems to Hopewell Glen, Violet Avenue in Poughkeepsie, and Hyde Park. And I believe they involve flow rates, and they are saying that there's not enough flow rate to flush out the small particles of organics, and hence they react with the chlorine, form chloroform, among other things, the chloramine group, which is cancer-causing materials, and Hopewell Glen, I believe, is now drinking bottled water.
No,
No?
no.
I know somebody that lives there, and they were getting bottled water delivered.
Well, they may have it first, but it's not required by the health department.
Okay, it's not, okay. So the levels can exceed health department requirements, but they don't have to drink bottled, okay.
It doesn't exceed. What it did is it triggered the fact that it now has to be
Yes.
tested quarterly instead of annually.
There were houses that failed.
And, could I finish?
Sure.
Okay. The MCL, I believe the acceptable MCL is 80. And the health department regulation is when you have one test that exceeds that MCL, then you have to test quarterly. And then you do the average of 4 quarters to determine whether or not you comply with the MCL. We had one test that failed. That water supply is from the Dutchess County Water Transmission Line. That is not the line that we're talking about for the water supply here. 2 different sources of water.
Yeah, the one comes from the Hudson River. I
Right.
assume the other one's from Wells, East Fishkill.
Correct. Wells and Fishkill.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
what you said was 35,000 gallons was the usage for about 150 homes.
Right.
That means about 230 to 240 gallons a home. If there's 10 homes
Per day.
here, per day, yes. If there's 10 homes here, it says they're gonna pull about 2,500 gallons of water past this station to there. What's the guarantee we don't hit the same problem?
Because that pipe that they'd be tapped into is the pipe that's feeding all the 181 homes that goes up to the water tank, all the way up behind the Baptist
Yeah,
church.
but still, they have to go down to 52 through the long pipe, a little diversion across the river, across the road to only 10 homes, and this.
But first of all, it's groundwater, which doesn't have the same organics as the river.
Okay?
And the problem that's being caused in the Dutchess County transmission line is the the chemical whatever it is.
Chemical reaction,
Between
chlorine,
the chlorine and the organics from the Hudson River. The organics from the Hudson River are created by the animals that live in the river. It's not from groundwater. So groundwater does not contain the same organics, so it's not impacted in the same way. And the movement in our Shenandoah water line is far greater than the movement in the Dutchess County water line is,
And-
because of the size of the pipe and the volume of the water.
And Tom, just to be clear, regardless of the water line, they're subject to the same types of testing.
Correct.
So you'd have the same assurance that if a test is failed, there would be.
But it's
fail-safes in
impossible
place.
for this particular problem to happen because of the organics are not present in the water.
Understood. Understood. Okay.
How, okay, people say it's impossible, but I'm not sure I accept that. Because I know they say that one failure doesn't mean everybody's gonna get cancer. It's gotta be an average over a year for 4 quarters, or something like that. And I'm thinking, I'm drinking this stuff, and do I really trust that?
But that's beyond your purview as a member of the planning board.
That may
It's
be.
beyond the town's
I
purview.
just thought it was a subject that should be mentioned.
Right. Well,
Okay.
you've made your point.
Vague sense of malaise, duly noted.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Let's go ahead and, if anyone here from the public would like to speak for or against the John Jay gas station, what I'd like you to do is come on up. We have a sign-in sheet here on the table, and we'll call you up in the order you sign in. And if you're the first person that signs in, you can come right up to the podium.
Hi, my name is Barbara Stuck. I was here at the last meeting, and I just wanted to say that I appreciate the fact that you listened to our concerns and did some investigating. I even called, I don't want to call you Brendan, it sounds disrespectful to me, the transportation man at his office, and he listened. And obviously, they've done a lot of work. One of my concerns is, though, the car wash and the gas station have been closed for several years. So any studies in the past couple of years are not going to be the same as the impact of developing this site again now is going to have, because the traffic there is minimal now, because all people go in there to do is to buy cigarettes and lottery tickets. The car wash has been closed for years. Nobody's buying gas there. So any studies using the last couple of years really, I think, don't reflect.
Let me just clarify that. When I talked about that we did a no-build analysis with the gas station to reopen in its currently configured structure with a service station, a gas station, and a car wash, we estimated what the traffic would be for that and included that in the study. That's why the levels of service went down. So we made an estimate of what the traffic would be if it was opened back up to its full capacity the way it's configured now.
Okay. I also don't remember at the last meeting, and I could be wrong, I know he said there was going to be a drive-through. I don't remember him saying that it was going to be a Dunkin' Donuts at the time, at the last meeting. It is supposed to be a Dunkin' Donuts. He did not say that last time. He just said a drive-through window.
He may not have
He said a
the store
Dunkin'
name, but
Donut?
He did say a coffee.
Oh, he did, a coffee shop. Okay, okay, then that was my misunderstanding. Okay, well, I still have concerns about the traffic. And I think they're really valid, serious ones. There's a lot of coming and going and different driveways and kids crossing the road against the light, and it really is a dangerous intersection already. So if you're going to do this, and I think a lot of it is a big improvement to the site, the traffic really has to be looked at, or it's going to be a disaster. And it takes much more than 15 seconds to get out of Lake Drive or Rathel Drive. I've sat there sometimes trying to be patient, and at the wrong time, it takes a long time. So since I raised a lot of those concerns last time, I appreciate that you're definitely looking at them. And he did tell me that the DOT has the last word, so the more ammunition you have for them, the better I think it will be. So thank you.
Of the options we talked about, was there anything that made more sense to you than other options as far as what we could?
Well, I think if they configured a traffic light properly, like he said, with where they go into John Jay now, if that all could be blended in, yes, that's a possibility, I think. But then there is one right up the road, so I'm not sure. And he says we don't meet the parameters or whatever anyway, but
for
anything that's going to make it safer is a viable option, in my opinion. So thank you again.
Thank you. Kathy, the next name?
Ann Muse.
Ann?
Hello. I am very concerned with the traffic there too, because I live in Lake City. And it seems like people coming east on 52 and want to turn into that development. Most of them turn in there and go all the way to the back. They don't go in Rothel and go around. So I think maybe a light there or turning lanes would help. And it would be safer for the high school kids, because now they cross wherever they want. It could be moved back up to where the closed entrance is.
Okay.
Also, how many gas station pumps would be on this site?
Right now, four
Four proposed.
proposed.
That creates a lot of traffic. Could it be possibly cut down? Maybe 3?
It's one of the possibilities.
Sides, right? Total of 8 cars.
Both sides?
8 cars, 4 pumps, but you can on either side.
Phew,
The
that's
pump, so it's 8
huge.
cars at a time.
Yeah, that's huge. And is
That's
the,
certainly one of the things that we might look at to mitigate, depending what the results are with the DOT.
that's going to create a lot more traffic if there's that many pumps.
Okay.
Because all the high school kids are going to want to get their gas there. On the car wash, where is all that water going to be discharged?
Right now, the applicant's not proposing to have a car wash any longer. They're proposing to
Oh.
remove that use. The reason we were talking about that a little bit earlier is that one of the things the applicant has the option to do, if this is not approved, is go back to what the original use of the site was, which was the car
Which
wash
was the car
service
wash.
station and the gas pump.
And if that's the case, where would that water be discharged?
If that's the case, the applicant would have to come up with a plan for that
Mm-hmm.
and present it. I'm not sure where it would be discharged,
Okay.
but they would have to figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alan?
A couple things. Alan Kolodner, 11 Circle Drive, Lake City. Your traffic study, you only went back 3 years?
For accidents.
Okay. You should go back 10, when the IBM site was at full capacity. Because if that property is developed across the street, there's going to be a considerable amount more traffic and a lot more accidents. You also didn't, when you did your traffic study, you did it in the dead of winter. You should test it from September to November and from April to June, when there's twice as many students on the road driving cars. And also, you should check the time between 5 and 7 p.m. when the former IBM site lets out, because it's impossible to get out of Lake Drive at that time. Impossible. Nobody mentioned the tractor-trailer traffic that was mentioned in the last meeting that's going to now be exiting out of the back of that property, across the street from the exit from the Medical Arts Building, and making a left onto Lake to exit out onto 52. If they can't cut that, they're going to block traffic in both directions. So it becomes a safety issue if there's an ambulance or a fire or a police officer needs to get into the neighborhood, and that road is completely blocked off. Is the DOT an open meeting? Can the public attend these DOT meetings?
It would not typically be so, no.
Usually,
So how do they get input from the people that will ultimately be affected?
they get it through the transcript of the public hearings here and
They do, okay. Somebody did mention that if they're going to double the size of the pumps and go from 4 cars to 8, that's going to increase the traffic from your assumptions, because you took an assumption as to the current design of the building with 4 pumps.
The proposed was the 8 fueling positions.
But you also said that you looked at if you left the property the way it was.
Right.
So-
Which would be 4 fueling positions.
Correct. But that gas station's been closed for going on 2 years. So again, that's an issue with the traffic study. The owner did mention last time that they were going to take the cutoff through Archway Plaza off the table. Is the board committed to that? Because that'll push all that extra traffic that now fights to get out of Archway to make a left onto 52 into Lake City.
Well, that's,
I thought Archway
And that
took
was
that off.
Archway.
Archway said no, I heard.
right, that's right. Archway
Okay,
does one, yeah.
but this proposal will not go forward with that being an option down the road, correct?
We can't resurrect it if Archway's saying no.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, sir. Are you?
They
for-
build this building, it looks very, very nice, and 4 years from now, he cuts a deal with the Archway Plaza, or he buys the Archway Plaza and cuts that back open, and now we have
It
to...
would have to come back before the board, public hearings
That would be
and
a site
everything.
plan approval if
Okay.
you wanted to make a
Right.
change like that.
And the owner of the property did mention that he would be willing to restrict the hours of the drive-through, because we're going to have drive-through exiting into a residential neighborhood, which we don't have today.
Right.
So you're going to have safety concerns, possible vandalism, traffic that we don't currently have today. And I want to make sure that that is documented, because the owner did mention that that would be a possibility. So, he does seem genuinely interested in working with us, but I don't want these to be one-way conversations, and they should be made public.
Mr.
Thank you.
Flannery, excuse me. I want to understand your comments about all the people trying to make a left out of Archway. are you, but it sounds like you're against any effort to consolidate with the easement to get.
Yes, yeah, because that's going to throw more traffic into my neighborhood.
Onto Lake Drive.
Correct.
But you would not see any benefit from a single line of traffic trying to make a left rather than those two that are probably 100
You currently
feet.
have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exits out of those two properties. You have 2 on 52 at the gas station, 1 at Archway, and 2 onto Lake Drive off of this property.
Right.
So if you're going to push all that traffic onto Lake to then make lefts or rights, what are you accomplishing other than easing 52's issue and causing more of a problem for the 80 or 85 homes in our neighborhood?
So,
I think if that was going to be entertained again, it would have to be in conjunction with signalization.
right, I was just going to say, what's your feeling if that became a signalized intersection in the event that we did something like that?
I haven't had a chance to ponder that, but
Okay,
I mean,
we'll be adjourning, there'll be,
Two
the other
things,
thing- I'm sorry.
sorry, yeah, two things I think we should mention. If it becomes signalized, then A becomes something like a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
What's that?
An A service plan
The
with
level
a
of
signalized
service?
intersection, right,
No.
becomes,
No, it's just a, a different range.
right, but it's a much, A
It could be a
becomes
longer
much
period.
longer
Right.
hesitation, longer time.
and all that will
But you have
do,
a guarantee.
all that will
Right.
do is push traffic back through the residential neighborhood to exit out of Rothel.
The second thing I think ought to be clear is if suppose this plan is approved and the level of service goes to F, and it comes to pass that he does buy Archway next door, puts in the traffic lane in between the two of them to exit Lake Drive, and we then do a traffic analysis study, and we say, yup, it's an F then, yup, it's an F now, because that has happened at Palin Road intersection with Route 82. There was an F level of
Yeah,
service.
but your theory is flawed because you can't approve a project that makes it an F if it's a
Right.
D or a C.
And
Then we couldn't approve
But
this
if it's
project
already
now
an F?
without
Consideration.
litigation.
Well, that's why they're
For
going to
Mr.
DOT
Nishiyama
with
by
different
Archway
plans to
Plaza.
see the minute. And I think one comment that was, the chair lady made was the fact that, or I think even the applicant's engineer said if they can't come up with a proper mitigation, they may have to make the project smaller to reduce the traffic. So everything is on the table. Yeah.
Good,
well, that comes back to number of pumps and
Right.
size of the building, that sort of thing.
thank you.
What about reactivating, speaking of all the things that have changed since then, what about the light that was in effect? 200
Up by the West Campus
yards
entrance?
By the far west gate. What about reactivating that?
We did inquire, the DOT currently has no plans until such time that technology park is reestablished or redeveloped.
Okay.
There's just not enough traffic. And even, I think as, the residents will attest to, most of the people use Lake Drive. Because that's where, the density of the housing is more to that end of it.
Do we have somebody else?
Next one is Don Smith.
Don?
Good evening. When they proposed the car wash there many years ago, we were assured by the board, I'm sure you guys weren't here 30 years ago, but that it would be kept a clean site and that it would be updated and it wouldn't be a problem. Since then, the car wash is completely run down. The property is a mess. There's garbage all over the place. I'm concerned that the same thing is going to happen here. Not only the traffic problems, but the people that are going to shed cups and crap all over the place and keeping it clean. That's another issue. The traffic is, I think, the biggest cause for me coming out of there. I don't know what you proposed here to come out further down Lake Drive, but that's just going to make the queue come down Lake Drive even further to the Y intersection there where we have to wait now to come out and make a left-hand turn on 52. I think your data is screwed, and I think this is why. You're using MV-104s, and if I have a small traffic accident, it doesn't require that. I don't fill that out. So if I did a bump or if I hit your car and I exchange information, that's not data that you're not getting.
Just a point of clarification, that, what you had just mentioned, there's what they call reportable accidents and non-reportable accidents. Anything that results in damage less than $1,000 is considered to be a non-reportable accident. In many cases, that accident, if someone did call the police, is still recorded. And we try to do, we do all that we can do in terms of, we request all the data from the state of New York, and we also get all the data we can from the local police jurisdiction, because a lot of times they have information that never gets reported to the state system. So we get every bit of data that we can. And you are correct, it might not be 100% of data. If there's a little fender bender that no one ever calls the police on, it's not recorded.
I do wait a longer time than I think the F mark that you use for coming out of Lake Drive.
It's certainly several minutes of delay.
It is
Yeah.
a huge delay coming out of there. Plus, the maintenance that's going to be done on Lake Drive, with all that traffic going back and forth, there was a pothole there it lasted for months that we had to drive over that never got fixed by the town. So if this traffic is going to continue on Lake Drive, if the town doesn't keep up with Lake Drive and all this traffic that's going to be proposing, then we're going to be stuck with more potholes that we're going to be driving over, and somebody's going to be doing a lot of coffee runs. So,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
And the last one is Paula Corrigan.
Paula?
Hi, good evening. I live on Birch Drive,
You can push it back just a little bit, it's all right.
and I don't care what anybody says. It is such a mess there, and the people that live in that neighborhood, we just know that there's an accident just waiting to happen, because the people that pull in and out of that place the way it is, with no gas being pumped, it's continuous. I mean, where I make the sign of the cross when I get past that intersection, because people are just crazy coming out of there, and they block the whole Lake Drive. And we're talking about with nothing now but a little tiny store.
Don't go too far from the mic or we can't hear you.
It's just gonna
Sorry.
be such a total disaster between the children walking home on down Lake Drive and going to school. I mean, there's really no sidewalks. And I can't just imagine these trucks and everything coming in and out of that place. And I think the traffic, especially if there's a light, I mean, will be all the way down. I mean, it'll go so far down Lake. We'll be on Circle Drive, the traffic. That's how bad I think it'll get. And I don't understand why there has to be a drive-through Dunkin' Donuts when there's a Dunkin' Donuts 50 feet away. I just don't even understand the rationale to
The
that.
proposal was to move it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, the medical building, they only are allowed to come out on Lake Drive. That's their only entrance out, that I believe, because when I go in there, it's the only way I come out.
Right, they have an entrance from 52, I don't,
Entrance out?
they have an entrance from 52 in, I'm not sure, is
I'm
it
talking about out.
I believe it's a full movement.
Either way?
Either way.
out on 52? Okay.
I never knew. I just
Yeah.
come out late. I didn't know that you could go the other way.
Right.
So anyway, I mean, I could use Rothel because I'm down on Birch, but for some reason, I use Lake too. And it's just a horrible, it's gonna be a horrible situation, so thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to offer comment? Okay, come on up. And we'll have you sign in too before you come up to the podium. Please, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I've been living in Lake City for 35 years. My name is Ted Gressler, and I don't know where you got your facts as far as sitting there 8 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. I've sat there already 3-4 minutes.
Yeah, no, I perfectly agree. I think the analysis shows that.
First of all, I'd like to say I'm totally against the project, completely. And the station that is there right now has turned into a dump, like the other gentleman said. I don't know why you would propose creating something with all this traffic when you've got a high school right across the street. You a couple of times have said about eliminating the left-hand turn. Well, I work in the IBM complex, so I really don't want to walk there. And it's just ludicrous, and you're talking about moving a traffic light or putting a traffic light or whatever at Lake Drive. What are you gonna have, a traffic light every 150 feet? And all your studies are not gonna account for all that traffic, and God forbid, one of those kids in that school gets run over, because you're gonna create a nightmare. Thank
Yeah,
you.
just to clarify, the option we were talking about, and nothing, I mean, there's still a meeting to be held with the DOT, but the traffic light itself, the discussion was to move the existing traffic light at the high school entrance now up to Lake Drive and actually reroute the high school traffic so it's directly across from Lake Drive and would be serviced by a full-service traffic light.
So basically,
So that's I don't want you to think there'd be a traffic light at the high school entrance where it is now and then another one at Lake Drive. Those would be too close.
so
You're right.
basically, the people in that community where we live are never even going to be able to get out on Lake Drive.
You'd have a signalized intersection there.
Yeah, you'll have 50 cars waiting online to get out on Route 52. And then if you go the other way, you've got the traffic light that's covered with plastic bags that nobody wants to put back on.
Right. And again, you know, we haven't had meetings with the DOT yet, so we just wanted you to hear what the different options are that were being
Okay.
discussed right now.
Like I said, I'm just totally against the whole entire thing. You've got a 2-lane country bumpkin road, Route 52. And you want to put something there that belongs on Route 9 or 84. It's ludicrous.
Can I just ask, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I mean, everybody's talking about how awful the site is now. What do you want to see happen?
What do I want to see happen? Worst case scenario, just a small gas station there. That's it. No car wash, or no larger thing, no drive-through Dunkin' Donut. Is it really needed? For what? You got Blue Ridge gas station right down the road. You got another 2 gas stations, Sunoco and whatever, the other way down the road. You really need this huge thing on this 2-lane road, country road? I don't think so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brian, come on back up. Couple of things. First, I guess with the current conditions at the site, can you just make sure if there's cleanup to be done there, can we get that cleaned up?
We'll keep an eye on it.
Please. What's your sense of when the DOT meeting will happen and how much time we need to figure out after that meeting what the options are? I know it'll take them some time to get back to us, so.
Yeah, I really think we probably would need a month's worth of time.
Okay. And the meeting's scheduled or not scheduled?
It's not scheduled,
Okay.
but, I mean, all the parties have been notified. Just one of the DOT gentlemen was on vacation until today, so
Okay,
we'll work tomorrow to try to set it up.
okay. I know we've heard a couple concerns about the accident history. Is it possible to go back more than 3 years, or are those, I don't know how easily accessible records like that are.
Sure, I wasn't sure, we can go back further.
Okay.
We will try to do a little research to find out what the dates were when that was in full operation.
Yeah, I'm thinking not to do the solid timeline, but if you can try to pull a year or two of information when IBM was up and running, and then the 3 years you're already pulling,
Yep.
just to give us a sense.
When IBM was full up and running, it was 92. I don't think you can pull records back that far, can you? That was the year of the big layoffs.
I'll check. I mean, I
Sorry.
think we might be able to get some data, we just might not be able to get.
And that's
I mean,
just-
it's all microfilm, it's, you know, we can get it, it's just about,
That's
it's about how
asking a
long
lot.
it'll take us to get it.
That's gonna be
And
tough.
sometimes we can get printouts.
I don't think you need every single
Right.
year, but if we go back to one of those, I'll call them peak years as
Yep.
far as the traffic went.
92 was the peak year, and the layoffs were, you know, the next year, 93 in March. That's when 3,000, so 3,000 people.
2004 was the closure of the West Complex.
That's correct. So that's another big
That's
one.
another part.
But I don't think that was as big as the
Maybe
first one.
2003, 2002, 2003, something like that, if you
Think they
can't go
had
back all
double
the way to the early 90s.
West Complex cost.
That's close to.
Okay. Brian, just to clarify, we mentioned the hours of operation.
Right.
Do we have a sense of that yet, or just something we're willing to discuss to make
You know,
sure we're not open?
You know, if memory serves me right, I do believe Mitch said 11 o'clock was the cutoff, but let's just check the minutes.
If you can, just for the next
Yeah.
time, let's make sure we clarify that.
And we'll put a
That's-
note on the plan that has that stipulation, so it's enforceable
Okay.
by the town.
Okay. I know we had a lot of discussion about traffic tonight, so I think that does remain the big concern. So one of the things I'm hoping we'll see is once we get some input from the DOT, if you think the best mitigation for your site may be to downsize the site a little bit, let's talk through those avenues when you come back
Right,
again.
right. DOT is the big card holder here to see what their master plan is and what they're going to
Yeah.
be willing to accept, and we're going to obviously have to work around that. And the applicant is very, he's very concerned about how the public feels because we are right next door, and we got to be compatible neighbors. So it is being taken into consideration.
Right.
And the other thing, too, is with respect to the water, in this 1 month period that we're talking about, I'm hoping to have that conversation with Dean Sommer and get that meeting scheduled, so at least we can have an answer on the traffic, answer on the water.
Okay. If we went out about a month, that would be May 7th, or you could do May 21st.
What do you think, Brendan? Do you think we can get that done? Just knowing Dean's personality with DEC, I know he can facilitate a meeting rather quickly. We were hoping for the next 2 to 3 weeks.
But then you still need some time to submit to us and give us time to look at whatever you're submitting, so.
Now, do I understand correctly from what Tom said, that if the level of service goes to an F, with any mitigation that can be instituted, that this proposal's a no-go?
Well, that's a determination the board has to make as the lead agency.
Okay, so that's what I thought. The board had to make that
There are
determination.
all
It's not
kinds of
automatic.
options, right, that's part of the secret
Yes.
process.
But that's what I meant before when I said it can fail at F at 56 seconds, or it fail at F at 17 minutes.
I think once we get some clarity from the DOT and we actually are able to look at the mitigation options that are on the board, when we do that hard analysis, we'll be able to come to the table with a better understanding of what the magnitude of delay would be.
Okay. The 7th, you're going to need to submit a couple weeks prior, so the 21st?
I think we can come to the board with a submission with DOT, at least on the table. And it might be a verbal on the water aspect of it, because basically that's going to be a conversation and negotiation with DEC. And whatever information we have at that time, we'll obviously provide. But as far as plan layout and changes to the plan, I think it's going to just be more conversation. I don't know if we're going to have time to do a formal layout. I think we're going to be back in front of the board, talking about the issues again, and
Well,
talking
depending
about
what your
possible
mitigations are, if you have a
Right.
choice, you're going to want to talk, okay.
Right.
So May 7th or May 21st?
I want to go for the 7th.
May 7th.
7th? Do I have a motion to adjourn the John Jay's gas station public hearing to May 7th?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And I just want to thank again folks from the public coming out and sharing your comments with us. May 7th will be the next time this is on our agenda. All right, the next.
Students are back there.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
I can't hear you. Yes. Before we go on to the next item on our agenda, if there's anyone here, student-wise, that needs something signed, you can come on up and we'll do that for you before we go on to our next agenda item.
And look at the bright side. You had a topic that was very relevant.
Very relevant. Very relevant.
Not once did you say, huh?
That your name or my name? That's what I
What
thought.
do you need signed? Just the-
Right there, I would guess, right? Signal the, okay. Planning board meeting.
Thank you for coming. Get home safe.
I'm sorry? Thank you.
Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is the Banana four-lot subdivision up on Mountaintop Road. And this is a discussion item.
Good evening.
Hello.
Everybody leaving on my account?
We care, just so you know.
All in favor?
Aye.
What is that? Okay, so we've made a little bit of progress. We got our letter from the DEC stating that the Indiana bat is not an option.
Okay. And this was because of the height of your,
Not a problem.
Not a problem. Sorry.
Okay.
It's not one of our options.
Exactly.
What were you proposing to do with these bats?
Maybe a little condo complex or something, but no, what I'm looking for is, I'd like to finish out and try to get a negative deck so that I can get the DEP out to witness my test holes, as well as the Department of Health, and just get a machine for the day and do all my test holes in one day.
okay. Do we need to go to neg deck to allow that, or is that?
Well, I think DEP typically doesn't like to look at sites until they have a understanding that it's moving forward. They don't typically spend their resources going out to sites.
And forgive me, I don't have my notes on this one. Did we come out of public hearing already, or?
Yes.
Okay, so we're just kind of in the,
We were
waiting
basically
on
just
DEC.
waiting for this DEC letter,
Okay.
which we got.
Okay. Michelle, was there anything else in the letter that was of concern, or was it?
No, it was one of the best letters we've ever had. Basically, as far as clarity on what's going on with the native bats, just said basically that no further review for potential impacts to the native bats is required at this time.
Because of the elevation.
Yes.
The elevation, correct.
They get little
The option is off the table.
All right. So, we don't have a neg deck tonight, but we could schedule this at our next meeting. We'll put it on for neg deck. Are we ready to move to decision, or, and I apologize again, I don't have my notes with me, but,
I think we could do a neg deck. I mean, Steve, you might just want to try to clean up a few of the things so we can narrow down some of the items. I know you can't answer all the stormwater until we do the soil testing, but there was a few other things that maybe you could.
I've gone through and actually addressed most of those, but the outstanding one obviously is the soil testing.
Okay.
I thought that was input to the neg deck, not.
I inputted some information that was gathered back in the 90s by Mr. Barger.
Right, but
But
relative to your ability to go out and test, I mean, wouldn't that be just inputting the negative deck?
Well, because the soil testing has a bearing on this stormwater plan, and this is in the DEP watershed, we need the DEP to witness the test holes, and so everything's sort of tied
it
together.
feels like a chicken or the egg thing, because
Yeah.
normally we probably wouldn't do the neg deck without having that.
And I agree with that, but it's like, okay, what is the neg deck?
They told me no.
Change that.
Changes DEP's mind, because DEP thinks then the board is on its way to approving it, and they have such limited resources, they don't want to waste their time coming out for every test hole.
And they won't accept a letter from the
Anybody
planning
else.
board saying, short of soil testing, we're ready to move to a
That
neg
would be
deck?
called innovative and new, and they don't adjust
And the
it.
only thing about the only
Okay.
other issue with this chicken and egg kind of thing with DEP is I've actually worked in a community where they made changes once it was already approved by the town, the plan, and actually asked the applicant to take parking spaces out, and this won't happen here. But it's just a reminder that when DEP does this, sometimes they actually make changes to the plan, and then you need to make sure that it's not affecting your site plan approval or your subdivision approval, whatever it is.
Okay.
So when you get your answer from DEP, please CC us on all the correspondence so we know exactly what they're requiring of you.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we should be able to write the neg deck for the next meeting, but
Okay.
we wouldn't do the decision until
Understood.
later.
Understood.
Would
Okay.
that be like a conditional negative deck, or?
No, it'd still be, or maybe we could do a preliminary approval decision and hold over the final until we get the DEP input. And I don't know what to talk about that, I guess.
Yeah, if that's all right, we'll talk about that. The professionals will determine what the right next steps are, but we'll put it on for neg deck at our next meeting.
Okay.
And of course, this with the understanding applicant continue to waive the 62-day time period for making
Yes.
a decision.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
All right.
Watch out for that crowd out there.
All right. The next item on our agenda is the Melly 2 lots on Route 82. I think he's there.
Well, he was there.
Your beard has grown several inches since we've seen you last.
Has it?
Yeah.
I told my client I wasn't going to shave until this was approved.
Are we a lot longer?
Boy, oh, boy.
Perchance, are you a fan of ZZ Top?
Yeah, exactly.
Not really.
Not a fan of yours.
Good evening.
Okay, we have you on tonight because you submitted to us the copy of the plan for the DEC special permit, the takings permit, and the plan was fairly extensive something new we haven't seen before, and we just wanted a chance to kind of walk through it with you and figure out what the board's next steps are.
New territory.
Yep.
All right.
So you want to just walk us through it and tell us?
Clips,
Do you want me just to quickly explain the?
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle.
Basically, Keith had been asked, this is an Article 11 takings permit. So in other words, the DEC is basically granting them a permit to what they call disturb or harm the habitat or species. The Article 11, I was told by the DEC, is actually kind of like an impact avoidance permit. In other words, they say they grant the permit if the applicant can prove that they can do things to avoid the impact to the species, and then they'll grant them the permit. So part of the permit includes mitigation, and the applicant prepared a mitigation plan for the Blandings turtle, because that's the actual species that we're concerned with here, the Blandings turtle. And it included several conditions. Some were during construction conditions and some were after post-construction conditions. I attached those to the letter that you all have, so you can have it in front of you. And basically, as part of the conditions for the Article 11 permit, the DEC is requiring mitigation measures including habitat enhancement for Blandings turtles, nesting potential, and a wetland adjacent area enhancement. Under the mitigation plan, the applicant has agreed to monitor and maintain a turtle nesting area. The applicant, property owner had to sign this plan saying that they would agree to monitor and maintain this area, and also had to agree to certain restrictions including a no-mow and no clearing areas, as well as specifications for things like one of the things they had was to put grates over window wells so the turtles couldn't fall through. And there was also some conditions related to if a pool is ever put on the property, specifications related to the fencing around the pool and that kind of thing. Anyway, so basically the mitigation plan and all those conditions that I was just talking about are attached and you can peruse them. But I highlighted the major ones. And the DEC will not issue an Article 11's taking permit until seeker is complete. So we have to provide a neg deck for them to issue a neg deck, or we have to do some sort of finding statement for them to issue the permit.
And then, Michelle, I think we had, at least maybe it's just me, I had not expected to see, I want to say it's Lot 2 to be part of the no-mow zone.
Lot 2 is the lot off of 82.
Right.
And Lot 1 is the one just north of, I guess it's north, I don't know if it's north of the
Well,
restaurant.
they
Right,
doubled that up
so-
by saying no mow zone, no clear. It's
Okay.
either or both. This is all wooded, this whole lot's wooded.
So you're going to put the fence along the wood line or
Wooden
something?
fence, a split rail fence on the 100, just outside the 100-foot buffer here, so that
Okay,
it obvious delineation between the controlled area.
okay.
The more important habitat for the turtle is, there's a couple little area, there's one area over here off the site, and an area over here off the site that have open water areas. And then the nesting areas would be through here. So we propose to put a nesting area here in this little peninsula just outside the wetland line, which is nothing more than basically clearing the vegetation and creating a bare soil area. We put together a size of 20 by 20, roughly 400 square feet for that. So Lot 2 will have the fence at the 100-foot line, and obviously nothing can be done in that adjacent area without a permit for anything, whether it's a turtle thing or it's controlled no matter what.
So
Where is the logging operation in relation to,
His logging is right here.
oh, it's down in there?
Yeah.
So that's where all that equipment is now?
Yeah, he's got piles of wood over in here, and his equipment is stored over in there. That's all outside the,
It's outside the area that's going to have to be hand cleared every year.
that's just this little spot right here.
Does he say how,
It says
how's that going to be
hand-cleared.
maintained?
Well, the DEC is planning on visiting the site, I believe annually, once a year.
And she told me that they would have, the applicant would probably have to provide reports and photographs of the minutes, yes.
And who's going to verify that the temporary fence was put up October 15th through April 14th?
Well, and that's why we wanted to have this conversation, because this is something a little bit unusual in terms of conditions. We haven't seen this before.
Well, that fencing was for so that's a tree removal. The reality is, nothing's gonna happen here.
Right.
We're not building one house on 19 acres. It's proposed, it's shown that it is buildable for the purposes of seeker. The reality is, this is probably gonna be sold off and built, so this is being built. So when you drive by, everything that's here now will remain the same, except for the fact that the 100-foot area that was previously disturbed by the applicant is now required to revegetate naturally. So whatever's growing, the oak trees that are starting to sprout up are going to continue to grow in this buffer area here. Other than that, nothing's going to change here, except the removal of this driveway here and a house over here. But this all essentially is going to stay the same.
I remember all that. Let me ask a question. I mean, given the demarcation, is there any chance of having a pool or any of those conditions? It doesn't look like.
Well, there's plenty of space for it.
What, for this lot here?
Demarcation, right?
For this lot?
Yeah.
Sure, there's plenty of room here.
You think so?
It's a 2-acre lot, 1.8 acres.
Yeah, but I mean, he couldn't put the pool, the owner couldn't put the pool on the other side of the demarcation, can they?
No,
No.
the line's over
Can't
here.
create the buffer.
Nothing can be done inside the buffer.
Right.
There's no plan on doing
Right,
anything.
so I was gonna say, I'm not sure a pool would fit. I'm sure a lot of those things would.
Well, a pool is essentially 18 by 36, and it would be like this.
And he's gonna get a building permit for it anyway.
Have to get a
that shows
building
the
permit.
location.
True.
And as you, just so everyone's clear, the mitigation and the trap hazard and the protection and the monitoring is on the plat. All that information in this report is
For
going to be on
both
the.
lots.
Excuse me?
For both lots.
Yeah, it's on here. Although everything in there is here.
It applies to both lots, everything applies to both lots.
That's what I meant to clarify. So for lot 2, the smaller lot that likely will be built in the near future, if there's a swimming pool, if there's window wells for a basement, any of those things would require the mitigations that are in this plan.
Exactly, right.
And the mowing restrictions, everything.
Right. There's obviously not any mowing here because it's wooded now. So if someone was to buy this house and take the trees out, then they are in violation of DEC regulations, regardless of the turtle. The one additional thing, I believe, is that we agreed to provide the delineation posts on the wetland side of that existing gravel drive here. So we're putting in, I think, 9 posts along that driveway here. So we're going to allow this area to revegetate as well between the driveway and the wetland.
Okay.
That was a last thing that they had requested.
Keith, on the 19-acre lot, you said they're not gonna do anything. If the guy's got 19 acres there and you've got now what's a defined nesting area versus what I think you had before, which was an undefined nesting area that was larger. If I'm wrong about this, please correct me. That now that there's a defined nesting area, the person now has more flexibility in building on those 19 acres.
Well,
Well,
unless the turtles come and nest.
As of now, the proposal is one house.
I know you have to make it a buildable lot, but you don't plan on building.
If he plans on doing anything other than a single-family house, he's got to come before this board with a new application for whatever that may be. And at that time, another coordinated review will take place with DEC to determine whether what is proposed is.
I have to admit, I'm a little bit of a green guy, okay, a nut. What I'm seeing is that the nesting area defined to a very small area, and by the time people get around to wanting to do something, the turtles are gone, and now they just can do anything they want.
I think the idea behind the enhancement area is to create a portion of the upland that would be attractive to the turtles, because I think that's where they mate. And I think the idea is that they haven't seen, I don't think they've seen a turtle here since 1987 or something like that.
There was a sighting supposedly in 1987. So it's not like this site is crawling with the turtle.
I think they're trying to create,
I know there
they're
was a
trying to
turtle.
create a habitat that's better for turtles, so
This site
actually, in
meaning
some
this
ways.
property, or this site meaning the adjacent?
Well, no, it wasn't even on this property. It was actually over here in this open water area, which
But-
is, if you can look at the report, if you have it in front of you,
I know I was there when a turtle was run over right on 82, because I tried to get out and move.
so if you can see this is the
Yeah, I do
water,
that.
this is the Waterkill Pond.
No, I did not. I got pestered to God I
Waterkill
did.
Pond is over here, and then off the other side of this is the rail, this is the old rail bed here, this line here, and then over in this area, here's an open area. If you can see that dark area, this is the open area, well, that's where the turtle was sighted, in there. So it's on the other side, it's up in here, that it was sighted. It wasn't sighted on this property.
But this is the habitat that they would normally.
Right, the whole wetland.
So where it was sited, is that the habitat for the turtle?
Well, it's more likely the turtles are gonna be over in the open water area than over in here.
Does DEC admit that there's not been a finding of one of these
Well,
turtles?
the problem is they're very difficult to find all these turtles, and nobody's out there looking for them on a regular basis. That's the issue. So when sometimes they'll use the reports, and one of the reasons they make all the applicants do these habitat assessments for these threatened and endangered species is they're gathering data. So they assume that if someone goes out and does a habitat assessment, if they run across one of them, they're going to report it, and then they're going to have the data for their files. But they don't have the staff to go out and look at these things. They know that these particular soils are soils that the turtles like to nest in. There's not much of this type of habitat left, and they what they're trying to do here is create an area that will attract any turtles that may be in that area to nest there and potentially create more turtles.
I know on the rail trail, you don't see many turtles, but there have been snappers there, right on the trail itself. And when you get around Lake Walton, you can actually see the logs floating in the water, and there's loads of turtles in the logs. And I would assume the wetlands back there are pretty much the same. The turtles can't mate, I don't know if they mate in the water or not, but they can't lay eggs in. They have to have dry land with sunshine.
With all due respect, this is nowhere near the Lake Walton wetlands.
No, I'm just saying, but, no, that's why there'd be a lot less turtles. But even if you go to Lake Walton, you won't see that many. You won't see a snapper normally, and you barely see 5 or 6 turtles on the logs.
But they know that there's a certain area or certain distance turtles will travel to nest, and that is why this particular location has been chosen, because it's within that range.
So, Michelle, I'm again, this is new, so I want to make sure I understand. The applicant is likely not going to pull, and I'm assuming I'm correct, a permit for Lot 1 in the near future,
Correct.
but likely will pull a permit for Lot 2 to build on it in the near future, foreseeable future, right? So the way this is worded, Lot 1 and Lot 2 kind of go hand in hand for the Article 11, right?
I clarified that to make certain that was the case, and she said yes. Any condition mitigation condition that applies to Lot 1 also applies to Lot 2. It's the entire site.
But that's not exactly my question. So my question is, let's say that we pull the building permit for Lot 2. I'm assuming that all of these conditions need to be met on Lot 2, but because it's the same DEC permit, the same Article 11, does it mean that they also have to do the improvements on Lot 1, like clearing the 20 by 20 foot area and installing the fencing for the wet?
Yes.
Even though they're not pulling a building permit
Yes.
for Lot 1?
Yes, that's my understanding. They have to do all the mitigation in order to get the permit.
Is that your understanding too? That even though,
Well, what we gotta do is we gotta put the posts in,
uh-huh,
which is all around here,
right,
clear that,
uh-huh.
put the posts in down here, and put the fence in up there.
So you're gonna start monitoring and maintaining by hand
We
the
don't,
turtle?
what we don't have to do is put up the temporary structures unless we actually go to start construction.
Well, I'm looking at the 20 by 20 foot
Right.
area that needs to be cleared by hand. I guess part of what I was getting at is, if you don't pull a building permit for Lot 1 for 10 years, it's not like there's gonna be oak trees in your 20 by 20 foot lot, because you're gonna start maintaining that as soon as you pull the
Right,
first.
I mean, if you look at that map in there, you'll see that little peninsula, it's cleared now. It's open now, but it's gotta clear out some vegetation to create a little bit of a nesting area. But that area will be allowed to revegetate except for that nesting area.
Okay.
So who maintains that?
The applicant's
Well,
supposed
the applicant's supposed to maintain it, the DEC is going to be monitoring it
Well,
on an
until
annual
the
basis,
It
and we,
doesn't need to be maintained.
And the applicant's agreed, he signed his name. He's agreed to.
Well, they did with the American, the Eagle, bald eagle, you know, that's helped, but, I mean, it'll be a long time probably. I mean, and the,
But
I
if they
was
study
thinking,
and
I
they
mean,
don't see a turtle out there for 10 years, do they still need to maintain it?
well,
Well,
they
they're
haven't
saying
probably,
you're
they've
gonna
been on the
study-
site probably.
That
I'm
was-
saying if
They're
they
saying
do come
they're
out to
gonna-
the site,
Well, I
they
mean,
don't
one of
see
the
a
things that
turtle.
can
If
be.
you look at, they're saying they're gonna monitor it for 5 years and then determine whether or not they need continued monitoring or continued maintenance.
I mean, the
So
applicant.
theoretically, if after 5 I'm sorry, Keith,
Go ahead.
theoretically, if after 5 years, nothing's going on out there, they may say, okay, you don't have to maintain
Right.
it anymore. Or they may say, you know what, we think we're close, or you've already
Or-
got
But
turtles
is there
here,
a schedule
and
for monitoring?
now it's forever.
Is
Yeah,
it
it's
done
on the last
weekly,
page.
Monthly, quarterly? Do they sit out there for a day and watch to see the turtle?
They visit the site once a year.
You know, it's stuff happens.
I mean, I don't know what'll happen if turtles actually decide to nest in this location. That, that,
Forget it, you'll never be able to do anything there.
Well, right.
Not possible.
But I mean, even if you look at the section called trap hazard protection, it's numbers 9 through 12, I mean, that, to me, would be things that we would need the building department to be able to monitor, because these are things that would have to be, we'd have to catch it at the time building is going
Well,
on.
let me ask, is a copy of the plat in each building lot file? Because if it is, everything's right on this.
Typically.
You know, I don't know how you, I mean, any other project that has some kind of restrictive or requirement, how does that get monitored or, you know?
Okay, I think the difference here, I think, is that as lead agency, in this particular case, if you're neg decking the project, you're saying that you are reasonably certain that whatever you're allowing to happen on the site is not gonna cause a significant adverse impact, okay? And what you're saying basically, or what the, DEC is saying, is that there's no significant adverse impact as long as the mitigation plan is implemented. Okay, so as lead agency, you're weighing whether or not you can say there's no significant adverse impact here because the mitigation has been provided, and you're comfortable with that mitigation. And that's essentially.
I mean, the first condition means we probably shouldn't have a building permit pulled except between October 15th and April 14th, otherwise they can't install the fencing. Then I go to, assuming that we can put in the wetlands barriers, that all seems standard to me. The 20 by 20 foot maintenance seems onerous, but probably doable and not part of what the building department may need to worry about. But then I get to 9 through 12, and that's again something I think the building department would need to be aware of to make sure it's gonna happen.
Michelle,
I know
what-
Scott's not here
That's up
tonight,
to the
'cause
building
I,
department to do all that, right?
we've
Michelle?
never had one of these before, how
I
would they know
understand.
to
No,
look
I
for
mean-
something like that? I don't know how to flag it, that's what I'm
Neither
saying,
do I.
I don't really know how to.
What's the penalty if they come in a year from now? Yearly inspection, 1 year they pass, next year they come.
I
and it's all
did ask
overgrown.
DEC if, you know, is this enforced, you know, and they said absolutely. She said, I don't know how often they.
I'm just saying, they fail an inspection, nobody maintained it. What happens?
You know, my guess is they probably, if they fail one inspection, they probably, you know, are asked to fix whatever needs to be fixed. I don't know if they'll give them a
Let's ask it
monetary
a different
fine.
way. Let's say, I mean, the current property owner is signing this document, but let's say lot 2 is sold to somebody else.
Yeah.
And they don't abide by this. What's our enforcement ability? What's the DEC, I mean, what's the?
I think it has to go, I think they asked to have it put on the deed, correct? So that it would carry with the deed, so they'd be responsible for
But even then,
any property.
Well, it says on the
From an
subdivision
enforcement
plat, I don't know if it
fines?
can be put on the deed.
Would they just find them? Is that what we're looking at here?
And I mean, I guess even
Probably.
more important, Michelle, if lot 1 is no longer owned by the current applicant, and there's no maintenance of this, or there's no awareness of it, and Keith, I understand what you're saying, that it's on the plat, but it's a lot of little words, and I mean, Tom, is this something we would put on a deed, so it's part of
Because
what they
any note
require?
on the map is binding on all future owners of the lots that purchase off that map.
Okay.
I think that the issue that's presented here is you're going way beyond conditions that the building department has ever been committed to enforce. And I think that the administration should be brought in to see if they're willing to accept that burden on the building department, or what is the mechanism to enforce it, because, you know, there are a lot of notes on a lot of maps, but certainly these go beyond it. And
Well, these are right, these are unusual.
And you're going to have, this may seem trivial because it's a two-lot subdivision, but the conditions for Summit Woods, which is 100 and some odd unit lot, has all of these things with the basement window shields and everything else, and they want, in that case, the Fish and Wildlife wants a mechanism set up for permanent enforcement of it. I mean, this is getting to be, you know, an administrative nightmare for a town. You know, when all of us are gone, who's going to remember this? And with all due respect to what Keith has said, once you approve this map and it's filed, there's no restriction on the sale of either lot.
Right.
So
Well, that's my
whatever the current
point.
owner's intent is, I respect what he's saying. I'm not saying he's not, but, you know,
Well,
there's no prohibition on it.
But the reality is, I don't know if this is an enforcement issue on the town level. I mean, if someone puts a window well in.
Well, Keith, let's look at it this way. The planning board, in order to keep their integrity in adopting a negative declaration, has to be comfortable that the actions being taken by an applicant to mitigate impacts are reasonable and expected to be able to be implemented. If not, they're making a mockery out of the whole environmental review process by adopting a neg deck.
Well, then I would say then, you know, we could put.
I know what you want to say.
Well, don't we essentially have two things that are similar to things we've done before? You could just say, don't build a house with window wells. Couldn't you make that a restriction on the deed?
But how is that different than enforcing, if they put a window well in, having the right screen? I don't see one or the other, does
I
it?
believe inspections are done as the housing is built, and if that note was on the deed, it would have something to check for and
But it
say,
wouldn't
sorry,
be in
you
the
can't build
deed.
that
If you build a
house.
house with a basement, I think the state building code requires that there
Then
be certain
yes, you can't have,
ventilation.
I'm just saying that's one way to do
The
it.
building department doesn't get a copy of the deed anyway, so
Right. It's,
they're not getting.
no,
Okay,
the
that doesn't work
deed was
then.
more the idea for future
I-
property
yeah.
owners, so they understand it.
Well,
I
then
noticed
why
that-
don't we just put a note on it for the purchase of, you know, a lot 2 note set saying if lot 2 is built, if a swimming pool is built, it has to have this for the fencing.
Well, wait a minute.
If the window wells are constructed, they have to have this, and if no excavate, you know, it's, basically, the notes that are on there just say for construction on lot 2 and or lot 1, these are the things. I don't know how you,
But can we have when they do pull a building permit, can we have the plot plan come back to us? For each individual lot?
or get it,
We've done that in the past.
or we'll put a note on a plan that it's approved by the DEC for whatever they want to build on that lot at that time. And, you know, what if they build a house that doesn't have any of this stuff?
I agree, I mean, I don't.
Well, this-
What
no
does
one's-
that mean, approved by the Ds?
Well, if they want to put a swimming pool in on this lot, after they build the house, they have to get a permit. We could put a note on the plat that says, no swimming pool can be constructed without approval of the DEC, as part of the Article 11 permit.
Does the DEC handle things like that? I'm not familiar with the way these Article 11s work, and I think that's just my own.
The condition is just related to
don't know how else
just
to
related to
do
the
it.
fencing for the swimming pool. I don't know that DEC would actually have to approve the swimming pool, no. But they would certainly come out if the swimming pool was in the buffer or in an area. that
Right,
they-
well, what they're saying is if you're gonna have a pool, the fence has to be this. If you're gonna have a window well, you have to have a screen. So in this case, I don't think we have any drainage pipes, so we don't have to worry about condition 9. And then excavation work can't be done.
Back to Jason's point, are we able to put something in place where we can say the plot plan review has to come back to us before a building permit is pulled? Because that would be one way to make
That'd be
sure
one way to
that
regulate it.
we're aware of it
I would agree to that for lot 2.
for both lots.
All right.
I know you're not intending to build for lot 1, but you don't know what the future holds. I mean, if somebody decides to do that.
I would agree to that.
And also, I think just, if you put a note, there is the note on the
Good
map up
suggestion.
on the right, I understand that. But most people, when they buy a
Never
lot,
look at a plot.
they're gonna get a Xerox of lot, was
Right,
the one with the lot 2,
Yeah.
all right? And I think if you at least require some note
See
on,
notes or
on that,
something.
within that
Notes.
box, see notes on the map, then people can't say, oh gee, there's nothing on this, and then you open up the biggest sheet and it is.
I would
Because I
agree.
think that's a very deceptive thing that happens to a lot of purchases.
All right. if you can do that on both lots, and then just also make the requirement that the plot plan comes back to us before a building permit is.
I would agree to that as a condition of approval. Do I have to revise the plan before we do a decision?
We still need to do a neg deck, and we need to do the decision, so we'll condition for those changes to be made.
Fair enough. I agree to that.
Are there, Michelle, is there anything, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
go ahead, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
No,
to
we,
cut
talking about turtles in the neighborhood, sorry.
you off. Michelle, was there anything else that we should go over tonight, or any other? And are you comfortable that if we did those two things, that should be sufficient for the town's responsibility? I know the DEC has other responsibilities, but.
Yeah, I think that solves the problem as far as making sure that they're meeting the requirements. The DEC, all this may be mute in 5 years if they decide that this is no longer a, turtle nesting area.
Right.
But my concern remains, what if turtles do come back? And then I guess at that point, we'd have to deal with DEC again.
Unless all they're doing is just pulling a single building permit for each lot. Okay. Joe or Brendan, anything else we should go over before we schedule this for decision?
Our letter is pretty straightforward, but my only thought as far as the plot plan issue and the permit applying to both lots, just throwing this out there, is there something you could do to lot 2 that would basically take it out of the equation for this whole takings permit?
I don't think so.
No?
No. I tried to understand. Yeah. I asked her, and I said, I basically asked that question, and she said no.
Well, quite honestly, they won't take it out, but the reality is this area here is not the nesting area that they would prefer, because it's wooded and it's on a slope. They would prefer over here. So this is really not your typical nesting area anyway, but they didn't want to take this out of the equation. It's still part of the larger lot.
When Hopewell Glen was under discussion, there were several areas that collected water. And I think there was a split rail fence, and there were signs put up for no mow, weren't there?
I was recused from that project.
Okay, I believe that was correct.
I was in stormwater basins.
Stormwater basins, yes. But we put up a split rail fence around them, and we
Yeah.
had signs saying no mowing. I think it was for birds, but I'm not sure.
I remember the no mowing, and those signs were there. The fence was there with the wire mesh to prevent children from going.
I'm just wondering if that would do the same thing here. Nobody could mow then.
We have a split rail fence up.
No, I know you do, but I'm just saying signs or something else saying, no entry this area or. So remember the signs were proposed at Hopewell Glen.
Well, the posts that we're proposing throughout here, I don't know if you look at the plan, they are marked where they want. Do not remove, it's a survey, it's a wetland delineation mark. It's labeled on.
Keith, I guess I didn't put them in my letter. I kind of referred to them, the notes we talked about that you were going to maybe change or take off that were
Right.
standardized, and then any soil test data would eventually get edited.
Right, once we'll go to the health department and get that wrapped up.
So the only other thing related to the DOT highway work permit is that those driveway modifications, just something to ensure that they get done early in the process, whether there's a date deadline for them and some type of bond for that.
Well, he's ready to do it once this thing's,
I don't know how that gets added in, but,
well, is it a bond with the town or a bond with the state?
yeah.
State's
well,
gonna require something, right? Once we pull the permit from them, they're gonna require the.
Like, it's just something so that the town ensures that the work actually gets done in a reasonable timeframe.
So either proof of bond held by New York State or a bond with the town for the work. Is that sufficient?
Yeah, the work is removing this pad, adding this pad.
Nothing triggers that it gets done, that's the issue. Like, if, a building
Well,
permit
before
for
they
lot
could
two
pull
or
a
anything
building
for lot
permit
one.
for lot 2, I would assume that we would want the site work to be done. Keith, you're intending to do this work
Well,
once
it's
you.
a subdivision map, so you're gonna put in that has to be done within 1 year, and he has to either post a bond with the state or the town. It's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're proposing to go to decision on this, or?
Neg deck first and then decision, but yeah.
Okay.
If there's concern by board members, we should talk about it. Yeah.
I would like to see the enforcement, not to belabor this thing, but the enforcement mechanisms, I think, are the main thing.
I think we just agreed to do the plot plans.
Right, what would we ever do? Well, I mean, yeah.
And you're gonna put a note on each individual lot within the lot itself, referring to the notes on
Yes, I
the.
refer to the species mitigation plan on each lot, and
Right, but by enforcement, I thought, is also, is that something that the building
enforcement of what?
was
Well,
willing
but
to monitor
By-
and,
I'm sorry, Tom.
Monitoring,
No, I think the requirement that he has to come back to get almost site plan approval for each lot is going to trigger then the mechanism by which the
Planning board would
implementation will be
send
brought to the
instruction to the
building.
building department.
Well, the applicants,
Yes.
somebody be aware when they're buying a lot that that's gonna happen.
There's going to be a note in the box of the
They
minute.
they understand that.
the applicant was sorry he was.
well, there's gonna be another note on the plan that says lots, well, prior to construction, lots 1 and 3.
No building permit shall be issued without prior approval of planning.
Right, and that'll trigger it to come back here, and
That's
we'll
when we'll
remind
make a
everybody these are
decision
the
on-
requirements, and then we'll send
So-
that instruction.
No, it's not an application, it's just we submit a plan, you review it.
Right.
and- Right.
And then we would send a letter to the, or a note to the building department saying, here were the conditions, just to remind them. Because it is unusual, I mean, we don't normally.
I'm not
do
argu- I'm not arguing
Well,
that.
Yeah.
at that point, then it starts getting monitored every,
Well, during the building process, this would become those requirements would become part of that building permit monitoring, I would assume.
right, but is there a monitoring plan?
There is
Or is it,
Section 5.
Right. Yes, and that's done by the DEC. So the town, other than making sure the building or a swimming pool or something like that is built correctly, according to this plan, the monitoring of the site and the turtle habitat area and all of that is the DEC's responsibility.
Now, just to be clear, the plot plan, we submit a plan to Pam. There's no application or fee, no public hearing. We just submit it and it gets reviewed. and-
We would put it on the next available agenda for
Okay.
discussion, and then it would be.
Never say never about a fee.
Well, as of now,
yeah.
we agree to that.
It won't be a formal application if that's what you're
That's what I'm
asking. It
asking.
would be, you'd bring it in as a discussion
Probably
item.
whatever the discussion fee is.
No public hearing now.
No, I wouldn't expect so.
Only for what?
No.
Okay. And that is the last thing we should talk about. This change is a little bit different than what we had originally expected. I don't think it's affecting the plan significantly, but are we all comfortable this does not need to go back to public hearing, that it is minor in terms of the site plan? Okay. That was the last piece. All right.
Close to cut that beard off.
Okay.
I think the turtles are toasted there, yeah.
We have, we'll schedule this. Right now, it looks like April 16th. There's a possibility it may move to May 7th, but it'll be our next available, on our next agenda, it'll be on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the record, I'm pretty sure Bob wasn't fast enough to catch the turtle.
No, I wasn't. Somebody ran the turtle over. There was a cop right behind me when I pulled over, and I think the time explaining to him what I was doing was enough time for somebody to go on the painted line and run the turtle over. Irritated me. No end.
The next item on our agenda is the Hopewell Sports Dome. And what we wanted to do, I know we had the presentation at our last meeting with the Sports Dome, and we owe back to the town board some comments. Tom, I know that we don't have yet actual proposed zoning text. So is the intent of our comments to be the types of things we think the special zone should address, or?
Well, quite
special-
frankly, I think perhaps you should wait. The applicant has been told from day one that they should really submit their
Proposed text.
concept with respect to the bulk requirements, the coverage, and the setbacks and everything. They haven't done that. We've been told that since your meeting, they retained a new design team or site development team. So they told us within 3 weeks that they were going to be submitting something. So I think it'd be more productive if you had that before you.
Okay.
'Cause
I
you
just,
might
I was
suggest-
conscious of the fact that the town board asked us for comments back
But the
in
town
April.
board's not
so-
ready to proceed forward until more definitive information is provided and a text can be generated.
All right, so should the planning board hold off, or should we just send the town board the comment that we'd like the opportunity to review the additional?
I believe you should probably hold off because it may be counterproductive. If you think a
Okay.
20-foot setback is good and they need a 10-foot, then there has to be a discussion over again.
Okay, all right, is everyone on the board comfortable with that? Okay. Then I know it's not on our agenda, but there is a letter in your packages from Mission Church, and I know Scott's not here, Pam, but he did ask that we take a look at this request. It's a request to be able to crush rock on the site at Mission Church. And we know we had talked about this with them, but they are coming back formally now and saying they would like to do that. Do we want them
More than
back
just-
here?
yeah.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll ask them to come to our
Come
next
back with a
meeting.
plan.
That's fine.
Dust control, all that stuff.
Okay. So we'll ask them to come back to our next meeting with the plan and the detail that we talked about.
April 16th?
It'll be whatever our next,
All right, push it off to the meeting.
next available agenda.
Next available, I like that. If they have,
I only say that because our April 16th agenda is somewhat tentative right now. There's only one item, so.
But it's a biggie.
No. Montage, Hilltop, Lake Deck for Banana.
I only had one thing.
I'm all for cancel.
now they gotta have.
I only have one thing on it.
That's old.
What?
That's old.
Don't believe anything in your folder.
It's not right.
All right. All right,
Yeah.
then we will put it on for the
Banana.
16th.
Okay.
Okay.
What?
And can we just let them, I know Scott's not here, but if we can just let them know we want them to come and present to us their plan for the crushing, the mitigation of the dust, the hours of operation, et cetera, et cetera.
Did you say the 16th or the following?
I
Next
said
available.
April 16th.
Pam was
Okay.
just telling me, okay.
What?
Pam was just saying don't do it on that day,
That's why I said go to the site.
because it's filling up.
I'm sorry, what do we have on the 16th? I've got montage.
Montage, Hilltop, the Neg Deck for Banana,
There's 4 hours right there.
possibly Melly. Because that you said either the 16th or the 7th.
Well, if we're having the meeting on the 16th, then we'll do Melly as well. I just wasn't sure. My original agenda was light, and we're having a meeting tomorrow with the applicant that's on for the 16th, and I don't know what the result of that meeting will be. That's why I wasn't sure we'd be having this meeting.
Okay.
Okay. That's fine. We'll have the meeting on the 16th. We've got enough here, and we'll add Mission Church to it. What I'm going to suggest, if the board is okay with this, I know normally we put our discussion items at the end, but I think what we'll do, because these will be fairly short, let's get these folks in. We'll do our discussion items first and our decisions first, and then we'll move into the reviews for completeness, if that's all right with everyone. I know it's a little bit out of order, but I just think it would be, rather than having applicants sitting here for hours on end. Okay, excellent. Does anybody have anything else for the meeting? Then do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Thanks, everybody.